snow fell like white ash on the empty street the night everything changed, and Daniel felt the weight of the world settle on his shoulders as he tightened his grip on the steering wheel. Christmas Eve had a way of amplifying what was missing, and for him it was impossible to ignore the absence of his wife, the warmth she once brought, and the life that collapsed the day she was gone. The city glowed with festive lights, but inside his chest there was a cold, echoing hollow. He was a single father driving home from a late shift, exhausted, counting the hours until morning when his little daughter would wake up and ask if Santa had remembered them this year. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Stories like this remind us that even the smallest act can change lives forever. Daniel's life had narrowed into a careful routine since the accident that took his wife to winters earlier. He worked 2 jobs, slept in fragments, and learned to braid hair with trembling patience because his daughter Emma loved it that way. Christmas had once been a celebration filled with music and laughter, but now it was something to endure. A season of memories that arrived uninvited and lingered longer than he wanted. He had promised Emma a modest Christmas, no grand gifts, just a tree, a few lights, and time together. That promise felt heavy tonight as his bank balance hovered dangerously close to empty and the road home stretched longer than usual. The snowstorm thickened, blurring the edges of the city into a watercolor of white and gray. Traffic thinned until Daniel felt like the last moving soul in a frozen world. That was when he noticed them. 2 figures sat hunched on a bus stop bench beneath a flickering streetlight, their bodies angled toward each other as if sharing warmth. At first, he thought they were waiting for a late bus, but something about the stillness made him slow down. The bench was dusted with snow, the bus schedule sign bent and half-covered, and the street was silent enough to hear the wind whistle through the cracks of abandoned storefronts. As Daniel drew closer, he saw that the figures were an elderly couple. The man wore a thin coat that looked decades old, its fabric darkened by melting snow. The woman beside him was wrapped in a faded shawl, her hair silver and uncovered, her hands trembling as she clutched a small paper bag. Their faces were lined not just with age, but with the deep, weary marks of people who had waited too long for something that never came. There was no luggage, no bus in sight, and no warmth anywhere near them. Daniel felt a familiar tug inside him, the same instinct that had pushed him to keep going when life demanded more than he thought he had. He drove past them at first, telling himself he could not afford to stop, not tonight. Not with Emma waiting at home and bills piling up like snowdrifts. But the image of the couple burned into his mind. The way they leaned toward each other suggested a shared history, a lifetime compressed into that fragile moment on a cold bench. He imagined his own parents, long gone, and the thought tightened his chest. He pulled over a block away and sat in the car as snow gathered on the windshield. His breath fogged the glass, and his heart argued with his head. He had so little to give, barely enough for his own child, and yet something inside him refused to let the night end that way. The engine idled, humming softly, as Daniel made a decision that would ripple far beyond this moment. When he returned to the bus stop, the couple looked even smaller, the snow settling into their clothes as if trying to erase them from the world. Daniel approached slowly, aware of how intimidating a stranger could be, especially on a night like this. The man looked up first, his eyes sharp despite his age, scanning Daniel's face with cautious curiosity. The woman followed, her expression a mixture of fear and quiet resignation, as though disappointment had become an old companion. Daniel learned through gestures and fragmented explanations that the couple had been dropped off earlier that evening. Their son had promised to return with tickets for a bus heading out of the city, a bus that would take them to a warmer place, somewhere they could spend Christmas together. Hours passed, the last bus left, and the phone number they clung to rang without answer. The truth hovered unspoken but heavy. They had been abandoned on Christmas Eve, left with nothing but each other and the cold. The realization hit Daniel like a physical blow. He thought of Emma again, her small hands wrapping around his neck when he came home late, her absolute trust in him. The idea of leaving someone behind, especially parents who had given a lifetime of love, felt unbearable. He did not know the couple's full story, but he knew enough to recognize the pair when he saw it. Daniel's apartment was small, barely enough for him and his daughter, and yet the thought of sending these two back into the storm felt impossible. He weighed the risks, the inconvenience, the fear of inviting strangers into his fragile life. But something deeper, older, and more powerful than fear guided him now. He offered them warmth, a ride, and a place to rest, at least for the night. The man hesitated, pride flickering across his tired face, but the woman's shoulders sagged with relief as if the world had finally loosened its grip. The drive back was quiet, the car filled with the soft sound of the heater and the steady fall of snow. Daniel felt the tension ease just slightly, replaced by a strange sense of purpose he had not felt in a long time. When they arrived, Emma was still awake, curled on the couch beneath a threadbare blanket, waiting for her father. Her eyes widened as the sight of the guests, curiosity shining brighter than the Christmas lights in the window. The apartment transformed in subtle ways that night. Extra blankets appeared, soup simmered on the stove, and the air filled with a warmth that had nothing to do with the heater. The elderly couple moved carefully, as if afraid of taking up too much space, their gratitude expressed in small nods and gentle smiles. Emma watched everything with quiet fascination, absorbing the unspoken lesson unfolding before her. As the night deepened, stories emerged, not through direct conversation but through shared moments and expressions. The couple's hands bore the marks of decades of work, their eyes reflected love tested by time and hardship. Daniel felt his own grief soften, not disappear, but shift into something less sharp. He realized that in offering shelter, he had found something he did not know he needed: connection. Christmas morning arrived with pale sunlight filtering through frosted windows. There were no lavish gifts, only a modest tree decorated with mismatched ornaments and paper stars Emma had made at school. Yet the room felt fuller than it had in years. Breakfast was simple, but shared. Laughter, tentative at first, found its way into the space, echoing off the walls and settling into corners long untouched by joy. The elderly woman watched Emma with a tenderness that suggested memories of children long grown, perhaps distant now. The man's gaze softened as he observed Daniel juggling responsibilities with quiet determination. There was a recognition there, a shared understanding between generations of what it meant to endure and keep going despite loss. Later that day, as the snow slowed and the city stirred back to life, Daniel helped the couple make calls, reaching out to shelters, community centers, and anyone who might offer assistance. Each call carried uncertainty, but also hope. Eventually, a small local charity responded, arranging temporary housing and support. The relief was palpable, though tinged with sadness at the reality of what had happened to them. When it came time for the couple to leave, the apartment felt strangely quiet again. The woman embraced Emma gently, her eyes glistening, while the man clasped Daniel's shoulder with a grip that conveyed more than words ever could. There was gratitude, yes, but also something deeper, a reminder that kindness could bridge even the widest gaps. After they were gone, Daniel sat by the window, watching the last traces of snow melt into the pavement. Emma curled up beside him, her head resting against his arm, her presence grounding him in the moment. He realized that this Christmas, born out of exhaustion and sorrow, had given him something unexpected. It had shown him that even in his own struggle, he had the power to change the course of someone else's life, if only for a night. Days later, a letter arrived, simple and handwritten. The elderly couple thanked Daniel for seeing them when the world had looked away. They spoke of warmth, not just physical but emotional, and of a child's smile that had reminded them of better days. Daniel folded the letter carefully, placing it somewhere safe, knowing it would be a reminder when life felt overwhelming again. The story did not end with miracles or sudden wealth. Daniel's life remained challenging, marked by long hours and quiet nights. But something fundamental had shifted. Emma began asking more questions about helping others, about why some people were alone, and Daniel answered as best he could, aware that she was learning more from his actions than his words. On the next Christmas Eve, Daniel drove the same route home, the city once again dressed in lights and snow. He slowed near the bus stop, now repaired and brightly lit, and remembered the night that altered his understanding of what it meant to give. He did not see the couple there, but he felt their presence in the memory, a quiet assurance that kindness leaves echoes. Before this story comes to a close, take a moment to comment below and share what this journey meant to you or a time when kindness changed your life. Your words might be the encouragement someone else needs right now. As Daniel tucked Emma into bed that night, he felt a peace that had eluded him for years. It was not the absence of pain, but the presence of purpose. He understood that life could be harsh and unfair, that people could disappoint in ways that shattered trust, but he also knew that compassion could appear in the most unexpected moments, carried by ordinary people who chose to stop, to see, and to care. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that humanity still shines through even the coldest nights, please like, share, and engage with this video. Your support helps spread stories of hope to those who need them most. And remember, sometimes the most shocking thing we can do is simply choose kindness when the world expects us not to.